Hello everyone, my name is Exabu. Welcome to part 3 of my coverage of Unity of Command 2's Victory in the West campaign on hard. And today we're going to cover the entirety of its 4th conference, very appropriate, 3rd video, 4th conference, from Gothic Line to Market Garden. And speaking of Gothic Line and the fact that it's only available on the historical track of the campaign, let me just point out that for these videos I'm doing 2 parallel playthroughs of the campaign, one ahistorical and the other one historical, and so far I'm happy to say I haven't seen too much difference in the level of difficulty, except for some of those additional interesting and not always very easy missions like the 4th Casino and the Gothic Line, which we'll see today. In any case, I had the honor of playing the really annoying missions like Dragoon and Market Garden in both these playthroughs, so there's really no avoiding them. And speaking of these, this conference is extremely puzzly, with missions like Dragoon and Race Across France, where you are sort of pushed into this narrow chute towards victory, and if you deviate, you're very likely to fail. And to help you with that, I'm publishing not 1, not 2, 3 playthroughs of missions in this conference on my 2nd channel, Slotherboom on Couchbusek, specifically Dragoon, Market Garden, and Ljubljana Gap. I'm pretty satisfied with my outcomes, so if you have trouble dealing with these, go ahead and check those out. I will add all the rest of the missions over time. But now, let's look at the doodles. Advance on Antwerp reminds me of some of those Polish missions in Blitzkrieg, where you just pierce the thin initial defenses and just rush like crazy trying to reach all of those objectives somewhere deep in the country. And this indeed is what you should do. All of the tanks that you get on turn 1, and you will get some armored reinforcements later, must all go towards Antwerp as quickly as possible, along that railway line leading from Paris to Mons to Brussels and to Antwerp, and ultimately, this is the most difficult objective in the mission. Do not, and I repeat, do not let your tank get distracted by anything else, like Amiens, Lille area. It's either completely unnecessary or can be dealt with later. The same is true about the Namur and the Mézières area. You will have to eventually go there, but your primary target is Antwerpen. Obviously, on turn 1, your initial objective will be to kill as many German tanks as possible. As you can see, all of them are concentrated next to the front line, and any German mobile troops that you will encounter later are all of these guys that you didn't kill at the beginning. So kick out all of those rearguard units first, damage that Panther with a counterattack badge using your air supports, and then destroy it. Remember that tanks only use the counterattack ability if they're powerful enough. And finally, try and kill that Panther behind it, so that, well, you kill the tank division and then you hold the bridge leading to Rouen. Do the same in the Canadian area. I'm really not showing it here, it's not too difficult, but I urge you to pay attention to that British 6th Airborne Division, which you should have as an elite. This unit has the potential of being the ultimate city buster, so equip it with a Special Forces step, probably Commandos, a self-propelled artillery step, and importantly, Hobart's funnies. In short, these are Churchills that do engineering, meaning that you squeeze 4 functions into a total of 3 steps. And with that in mind, you will be able to take Le Havre very easily, because even the initial combat against these well-fortified troops there will give you an absolutely stunning prediction of 0 to 2. And also, speaking of these coastal objectives, they shouldn't cause you too much trouble because they're not very urgent. You should still have your OP paratroopers up your sleeve, hopefully with motorization. This is a good reason to give the Canadians that skill. But in any case, this is where most of your infantry, i.e. the Brits and the Canadians, theirs is the slow combat to push towards Le Havre, take it, push towards Amiens, take it, push towards Boulogne and Calais, etc., until there's no resistance left. You can use the tanks to get later as reinforcements in this mission to support this part of the operation. All the rest of the tanks, as I said, must push towards Antwerpen. Clear the Scheldt should not be occupied. I've never seen it occupied. And if it is, you're screwed because you're not gonna have any infantry nearby. In general, try to prevent the Germans from blowing any bridges along your way, because that railway line between Paris and Mons is going to be your lifeline. The AI will probably be very obliging in destroying all those bridges between Lille, Mons and Amiens, thus protecting your flank, and you won't have to worry about that area at all. And obviously feel free to destroy those unnecessary crossings yourself. Once Antwerp is yours, pivot towards Liège and Aachen and ultimately Luxembourg. Some of your American infantry should be catching up at that point and helping you deal with these towns, especially Luxembourg. Finally, be somewhat wary about that mechanized division east of Paris. Past turn 1 it'll run away, but the AI sometimes likes to use it to block your railway line if it's not properly defended. So while you shouldn't send half your army to hunt it, make sure you're prepared for it to show up unexpectedly, so maybe sending a couple of infantry divisions to deal with it and then ultimately proceeding to Luxembourg might be a good idea. Finally, using your British HQ to build a bunch of pontoon bridges across the river between Rouen and Paris on turn 1 will be very helpful in letting you ultimately advance towards Mons and Antwerp. Dragoon is easily the puzzliest mission we have seen so far in this campaign, and the puzzliest bits of this very puzzly mission are the eastern objective, Grenoble, and Gap, and you have to do very specific things to reach them. So step by step, plop all of your naval landings, and remember that you can actually land your marines in a way that leaves open hexes, and a space for that American tank division to enter the map on turn 1, and drop the American HQ. I highly recommend you to remove that German division west of Nice, use one of your naval barrages if they seem too resilient to air support, drop your paratroopers behind the bridge northwest of Nice, and then push your tank division as close to that bridge as possible. You will not be able to reach it. The tank and the airborne division are the two units you'll need to take Grenoble and Gap. On its turn, the AI will blow up the next bridge on that road, so your goal on turn 2 will be to get both of those units next to that bridge and use your American HQ to repair it. Also set up a supply hub in the forest northwest of Nice. On turn 3, motorize the paratroopers and send them into Gap, and then get your tanks as close to Grenoble as possible. This is also a good time to upgrade your supply hub and move your American HQ. Ultimately, both the paratroopers and the tank division will be necessary to take Lyon. You will not have proper supply, then you'll have to rely on your HQ's emergency supply ability. As for the rest, the most difficult and frustrating objective in this mission is Avignon. Do everything to hold as many hexes around it by turn 5. It's a good idea to send a couple of American infantry divisions behind the tanks and the paratroopers, and ultimately take the hills in the forest east of Avignon. While the French clear Toulon, there goes another naval barrage, and ultimately Marseille. Don't engage your French tank division in any of these battles. They must rush towards Avignon. The Germans will probably blow that bridge up anyway, so at least holding that hex southwest of Avignon and maybe supporting the attackers is not a terrible idea, and in general, neither Toulon nor Marseille need more than 2 or 3 of your divisions to be taken. That Foreign Legion division is particularly great for that, and all of the rest of your troops should be pushed towards Avignon. They must end up as close to that city as possible by turn 5, so that even if they don't do any fighting, they can actually take that hex. Once Avignon is yours, congratulations, you only have to deal with Nîmes, which will not be particularly well defended, and right next to the bulk of your troops, Lyon, which you will deal with using your tanks and paratroopers, and the 11th Tank Division, which can be sometimes tricky. The AI sometimes stuffs it in a weird location somewhere between Avignon and Saint-Étienne, and I found that the best way to lure it out is to be as aggressive past Grenoble, using your tank division, as possible. The AI will see that so many hexes become enemy hexes, right next to its oh-so valuable Lyon objective, and will send that 11th Tank Division there, making it an easy target for your elite troops in that area. In any case, if any of this fails, just try again. The Gap, Grenoble, and Lyon idea works 100%, but the rest of this is a bit wonky, and this is a really, really, really frustrating mission. Oh, did you expect the puzzliness to end? Well, tough titty, because this is the race across France, and the puzzliness... Okay, it doesn't go to 11, but it's still there. And since I'm still recovering from Dragoon, let's start with the slightly more normal part of this mission. The northeastern push from Lyon shouldn't cause you too many problems, and Dijon is really an easy objective, but Besançon can cause you trouble, and here are a couple of tricks to deal with it. As you advance along both the sides of the river, push up your HQ and your supply hubs, and the ideal location for these is that groin area next to Dijon. This is very nice for feeding the forces that advance towards Besançon, and they should push across the forest and ideally touch that hex by turn 5. Repairing the bridges to help out with the supply is obviously well advised, and it's a good idea to send one infantry division on a detour south of Besançon and ultimately help with attacking it to cross the river. Actually, if you do well around Dijon and you can spare your tank division, it's also a good idea to send it along the river north of Besançon, and then when it's time to actually take that town, cross the river and attack it from the north. Once both Dijon and Besançon are yours, push forward and help out with Langres. That hex is probably not going to be yours by that time, and bringing that horde from Dijon there will help you out with encircling the hex, because you'll have to send one infantry division there from the north, specifically the division next to Auxerre. Lead it through Troyes and then up to Langres. It's probably not going to be able to take that town on its own, but it will protect that railway and that general area because the AI loves to use it to push tanks there. If it's empty, of course. Alright, now let's look at the puzzly parts. Point number 1, if the AI blows the bridge next to Verdun, or next to Rennes, or the first bridge between Troyes and Nancy, restart the mission, you are screwed. This leads us to point number 2. The goal of the 5th and the 80th infantry divisions is to cover the 2 bridges leading to Verdun and Nancy. Don't engage them in the combat with that German infantry division, destroy that division using planes, and the 90th infantry, use motorization and just get to those railway bridges. You need them intact, and obviously send that tank to Reims. Do not send that 4th armored division anywhere south. Push it through Troyes to protect those bridges and kill the infantry division that is next to it, and then send it to the northeastern corner of the map. It's much more valuable there. And then on subsequent turns, take Verdun and try to take control of that northeastern parts of the map. The problem here is that the Germans will try to bring crap loads of reinforcements there. And I say try because there's a little trick you can use by kicking any defenders around the Reach the Moselle objective and then holding all of those hexes, because these are the deployment hexes for the German reinforcements and they will simply not be able to bring them in. I also recommend you to blow up that bridge leading from Metz, or you might face a nasty surprise later in the mission. In any case, this trick will make your life much easier, especially since Nancy might be a little tricky. You're not going to be able to surround it easily, so make sure to bring good, well-equipped infantry divisions with artillery, special forces, and especially engineers, and treat that hex as your usual city fortress. I kind of expected Market Garden to be this horrifyingly difficult mission to take me a whole day and thousands of my nerve cells to crack. But partly thanks to the small size of this mission and the ability to restart it, it's actually not too difficult provided you come prepared both in terms of your troops and your HQ. Unsurprisingly and very much in line with history, this is a very paratrooper focused mission, and your first step will be to drop all 3 paratrooper divisions you're provided with in Arnhem, in Oosterbeek, and Roosbeek Heights. Then use your 101st Airborne Division card, you should get it in one of the previous missions, and plop that division next to Eindhoven. Its purpose will be to help you clear that whole area, then throw out the card and get the British Paratrooper Brigade card you get at Oosterbeek. Use that card and drop that brigade in the hex between Nijmegen and Arnhem. As you can see, there are major rivers separating them, so controlling those bridges is critical. critical. Naming it itself is not a priority yet. If the Germans send someone to guard it on their turn, you'll have the British Airborne Division to kick them out of there. Also, don't be afraid of attacking the German Mechanized Division in Delen right off the bat. I know the predictions aren't great. In my case, it was 1 loss versus 2 suppression for the enemy, but clearing that hex for subsequent entry, and don't forget, you need that hex to block the only reinforcement division you are getting in this mission, and obviously destroying that mechanized division in the first place isn't a bad idea, so go for it. As for the conventional attack in the south, equip your troops well, push hard and take Eindhoven, and then do your best to destroy as many German infantry divisions around it on first turn. The problem here is that the AI loves kicking you out of Eindhoven on turn 1, and for me it was the principal reason for actually having to restart the mission. On the second turn, the Germans will start bringing in reinforcements in that area, both to the west and to the east, and it's actually a good idea to capture all the hexes in the area west of Eindhoven. This will deny the Germans reinforcements there and make your life so much easier. So even if you take some losses kicking out that German infantry division west of Eindhoven, those losses are for a good purpose. For all intents and purposes, blocking the Germans in this way in the east is not possible, so expect a tank division coming in there. It might deal some heavy damage, but make sure you dispatch it as quickly as possible. Because of its speed, it has a lot of capacity to block your supply lines, kill your HQ, take your supply hubs, and maintaining a supply connection between, well, your positions in the south and Arnhem is critical here. And obviously, once you take Eindhoven and hold it, your primary objective will be to connect with the paratroopers in Arnhem and Nijmegen. The objective in Grave yields you yet another paratrooper brigade card, this time Polish, and since this is the last mission before next conference, I elected to use it as well. The specific location for the paradrop obviously depends on your tactical situation, but say, sending them to the coast and taking Zuiderzee, or at least covering one of your flanks around Eindhoven, might be a good idea. Another way of easily taking Zuiderzee is using that reinforcement division that you can plop if you take Delen. Remember that once plopped, it gets all of its action and movement points, so it can easily saunter into Zuiderzee if you really need it. And by the way, Delen yields you a Poxy 17-pounder gun. Also, and finally, speaking about flanks in the area around Eindhoven. Your troops are pretty powerful, but you're not given a lot of them. You will certainly not be able to set up a solid front around Eindhoven and set up a supply line to Arnhem and all of those other objectives, so exploit the zones of control your units exert. Barring that tank division, the Germans will not have anything mobile in that area, and it's possible to deny their infantry access to Eindhoven through zones of control and relieving you of the necessity to actually keep a unit in that hex. Ironically, this is a more defensible position in the end. Lombardy-Liguria is easily the simplest mission you're going to encounter in this conference, and the only marginal difficulty that you might encounter is that you don't have too many divisions to control, so equip them as much as possible. I actually lacked prestige to do that when I encountered this mission, and I had to do other missions first. In any case, giving these units craploads of specialist steps is always a good idea, and the best thing you can do for preparations. Also, don't spread your forces too much. All of your infantry in the north should focus on taking Salon, and because the defenders are rather weak, that green division of yours will rise to veteran in just a couple of combats if you do it right. In the middle, use both the infantry division and the tank division to attack towards Parma. Once again, the defenders aren't going to present too much resistance. You should be touching that destroyed bridge at Parma by the end of turn 2, and one of the infantry divisions there should be diverted from Parma to La Spezia, which which is probably going to be relatively the trickiest bit of this mission, in that because of the mountainous terrain, because of the towns, you might need to take some losses. But once again, with enough specialist steps, with enough experience in your infantry divisions, you are not going to encounter too much resistance, and you should advance straight to Geneva. Past Salar, and remember, it's not well defended, and it is a plain hex. Very susceptible to bombing, and by the way, Parma gives you a bomber card, so feel free to use one air support card. And obviously, once Salo is yours, advance towards Milano. It's very unlikely the enemy will be well entrenched by that point there, but if after all of that you will need some support, just bring the tank division, which will just keep whizzing west past that previously destroyed bridge next to Parma. Once Milano is yours, direct all of that infantry towards Geneva. It's not going to be a hard battle, but just in case, while the tank division rushes towards Torino, there is a little bit of a chance that you might not have enough time to take it, but to be honest, you are given plenty of time, and I've never seen it occupied. Except here in the beginning, I mean. Ljubljana Gap, actually wonder if there is a gap in Ljubljana, is a slightly puzzly mission, but at the same time, ironically, your success here sometimes depends on what the AI does, especially with those mechanized divisions around Klagenfurt. But as always, you can do a lot to mitigate that. And let's first look at the road leading to Klagenfurt. Point number 1, don't expect it to lead to any of the objectives. Send 2 infantry divisions there, and their purpose will be to distract the Germans and hopefully trap them in that mountainous area northwest of Ljubljana. If you succeed far enough and maybe take that town northwest of Klagenfurt, you will only have to deal with that tank division once you advance towards Maribor, and the direct route through Ljubljana is the correct one. Don't send anyone towards Fiume. It's another huge distraction, and it'll just waste your time and your troops, which you don't have enough of. Your first task will be to push your tanks as far as possible. Don't get stuck on those infantry divisions sitting in the mountains. Destroy that motorized division on the railway and get as close to Ljubljana as possible by turn 2, which is when optimally it should fall. Taking Ljubljana on turn 2 will almost certainly involve some losses, but Maribor and especially Graz are by far the most difficult objectives of this mission, and the sooner you get there, the better. If you somehow fail to take Ljubljana on turn 2, make sure that you hold the river hexes next to it, and build as many bridges as you can in there, so that your tanks can rush unobstructed to Maribor as the approaching infantry mops up Ljubljana. In any case, make sure to send all of your tanks towards Maribor. You'll probably need them to kill that tank division that will attack from the northwest at some point in the mission, probably turn 4. And if you see too many enemies accumulating around Zagreb, you might use one tank division to help out there as well. In any case, Maribor is your main objectives, and you should take it as quickly as possible and start clearing the other side of the river as quickly as possible. And quite often, those guys on the other side of the river will have rear guard on them, so if you approach them, make sure to attack them with your tanks across the river to damage them if their HQ hasn't given them rear guard, or to clear those hexes and build bridges if there indeed was rearguard. At this point, all of the German troops that are remaining between Ljubljana and Klagenfurt should be profoundly out of supply and relatively easy to mop up, and you should push towards Zagreb, having a couple of very strong divisions, preferably with engineers and mobile artillery, to attack Zagreb or the units around it right off the bat is a very good idea. Also, use those weaker infantry units that you'll get later in the mission to cover your railway. The AI loves taking Ljubljana from the southeast if it's not defended, and will use any opportunity to cut that vital railway line otherwise, even though I've never seen any attacks coming from Fiume. Past Maribor, you'll face this very difficult slice of land stuck between 2 rivers leading to Graz, and although I didn't do it in my playthrough, Maribor gives you the saturation strike attack, and the area leading to Graz is a perfect location for using it. It's not required, but if you're having trouble reaching Graz, absolutely go for it. Planning ahead and bringing a well-equipped preferably engineer-equipped or special forces-equipped infantry division into that area, and it will require some planning or at least motorization because there is a lot of distance to cover. That kind of division will make it so much easier to take Graz and kick those paratroopers out of there. Good luck. If you're going for the historical track in the campaign, Gothic Line is the only Mediterranean mission in the 4th campaign, so make sure you use all of those specialist steps, as you are provided with them in abundance and you won't have to worry about, well, eventually not having them in any other missions. The mission itself has a lot of potential to kick your butt very hard, and most of the difficulty comes in the western parts of the map, as you will almost certainly have trouble dealing with the Apennine passes, Abetone Pass, and La Spezia objectives. La Spezia is the most difficult one because you'll have to cross the mountains and then take a well-fortified city as well, but the approach in all three is virtually the same, and it's what I call the infantry breach duo. Bring 2 infantry divisions to the hex you're supposed to break through at. Both of these divisions should have artillery, at least one of them a combo of artillery, engineers, and special forces. And one of these, whoever does it best, does a set-piece attack on the defenders, destroying their fortifications, suppressing them, and hopefully forcing them to retreat, while the second division, which still has all the MPs, mops the defenders up and takes the hex. You will have to use this tactic crossing the mountains leading to La Spezia and the southwestern approach to the Apennine passes, because reaching that place from the northeast is very unlikely. And the same is true about trying to get to La Spezia using your tanks through Abetone Pass and taking the scenic routes around the mountains. You simply don't have the time to do that, so you need to break through head-on. Abetone Pass is slightly easier because there is a hill hex next to it, and you can bring one of your numerous and probably well-experienced and well-equipped tanks there. I recommend you to build a pontoon bridge north of Livorno during the preparation stage. This will give you easy access to that mountain pass leading to La Spezia and help surround and starve the Monte Pisano defenders and that nasty-looking mechanized division next to it. The eastern coast is generally much easier, and you certainly don't need as many tanks as you're given there, so you can actually send some of those weaker tank divisions and brigades to the west to help with guarding the railway line there. Also note that the infantry divisions guarding the approaches to Rimini both have rear guards, so just surround them first, and it is possible with the units you're provided with, so that they don't have anywhere to retreat to, and then destroy them because they're not powerful. And because they're not powerful, they're not gonna be too much of an obstacle, but at the same time, by not letting them retreat, you are reducing the capability of the AI to slow you down on your advance towards Ravenna and potentially Apennine passes. Once these 2 are dispatched, bunch up next to that paratrooper division guarding Rimini, and next turn weaken them using air support and feint attacks and suppressive fire, and kick them out, and make sure to bring a powerful infantry unit next to Rimini, so that next turn you can repeat the same feint attack and then storm Rigmarole on Rimini itself. And once you're past that mountainous area, you can easily exploit your tank advantage and just slice through whatever the Germans manage to scrap up there. And this is it for today. I hope this conference hasn't been too painful for you, because it has a lot of potential for that. And next time we're going to talk about Conference 5 and all of the alternative history missions therein. I really hope to see you then. Don't forget to subscribe. Cheers.